You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art Ed?
We'll try to slice it.
Who art it? Mr. Wood art Ed me.
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, where we explore visual arts in an audio medium. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and before I get started on this week's Arts Madness Round 3 update, I do want to just say a quick thank you to all of my listeners who have been participating in the tournament this year. It has been really cool to see so many of you from mostly around the US, but even from a few other countries have been weighing in to say who your favorites are in each matchup. Please continue to help spread the word and encourage all of your other friends to join the fun and passing judgment on all of these different artists. Now, before I start talking about this week's matchups, I want to take a moment to just point out some of the major artists that were knocked out in round 2. Last week, I said I was watching the matchup between Duff Goldman and Vasily Kandinsky, two artists who were engaging multiple senses in their work, and Duff Goldman came out on top with his incredible culinary creation. Vasily Kandinsky, one of the sort of pioneers of the abstract art movement in the 20th century, was sadly knocked out. Another big name from the art history world brought down to size was Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, who got knocked out by René Magritte in the last round. Sadly, Christo and Jean-Claude, who listeners might remember from my recent episode with Tim Bogatz, the two of them were knocked out in round 2, as was one of my old favorites, Felix Gonzalez Torres. Frida Kahlo also was knocked out by Joe Mills. Stuart Simple advanced to round 3, and Marcus Bromander is sadly no longer among us. Gustave Eiffel knocked out Michelangelo, and Raphael got knocked out by George Seurat, leaving Leonardo as the only Ninja Turtles namesake still in the tournament. Now, as I look at the round 3 matchups, I am noticing that in an interesting coincidence, Auguste Rodin is once again paired up against another sculptor. Of course, while Rodin liked to work in clay and plaster and bronze, Duff Goldman's preferred medium is cake, and the fact that he has made it this far into the tournament is a pretty good indicator that my audience seems to appreciate a man who is not above playing with his food. Now, another interesting matchup I am noticing, two of the heavy hitters, previous winners from the tournament, Vincent van Gogh is up against Yayoi Kusama. The very first time I did a Arts Madness tournament, Vincent van Gogh was the ultimate winner, and those of you who are listening and participating last year might remember that Yayoi Kusama was the winner of last year's tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see which of those previous champions will be eliminated in round 3 this year. As I look at the matchup between Andy Warhol and Joe Mills, it's sort of the old versus the new. Andy Warhol, of course, being one of the pioneers of the pop art movement, but Joe Mills has a fresh new illustrative style that audiences today seem to be responding to quite well. Phillida Barlow is up against Sharuvi Agrawal. Now, neither of those are really household names, but both of them are very strong sculptors that my audiences have responded to quite well. Sharuvi Agrawal did an incredible installation, a sculpture made of 26,000 bells of Hanuman, the Hindu deity, and Phillida Barlow is a contemporary sculptor making stuff out of just junk and discarded materials, sort of the anti-monumental sculptor. Now, the last matchup I'm going to talk about today is that between Homer Simpson and Leonardo da Vinci, two of the all-time greats. When I checked at the end of the day on Monday, after about 400 votes were cast, Homer Simpson and Leonardo da Vinci were within about 5 votes of each other. So I'm going to be interested to see how that one shakes out. Either way, I think it's going to be a tough loss, as both of them are legendary figures looming large and occupying very different spaces in people's minds and in people's hearts. Now, as always, please go to whoartedpodcast.com to vote for your favorites. And of course, check in next week to vote for your favorites again and see which artists advanced to round 4 and which ones perished in round 3. And remember that while half of our artists get eliminated each week, they may be gone but not forgotten. You can find images of all of the works discussed and the episodes to learn more about every one of these artists on the website. This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted. If you found this tolerable, please like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week in the show notes, on Twitter at WoodArtEd, and on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.